What's up, New York Rangers fans and BlueLineStation.com readers? This is Jennifer Streeter and Jake Mazarski coming at y'all live with episode 5 of the Blue Line Report. It's been kind of a little long time no talk just with the off season rolling around, but with recent developments, Jake and I just kind of wanted to get another episode out there and tell y'all a little bit about what some of the players have been up to this off season, talk a little bit about coaching changes and of course, just what's going on in the world of NHL. So I'll turn things over to Jake to introduce themselves and get us started on our first topic.
Yeah, welcome back, guys. Even though the Rangers season ended approximately a month ago with that 4-0 win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the team hasn't really laced up skates. I mean, it's been so busy for New York, obviously hiring Mike Sullivan to be the 38th head coach in franchise history. Going through other interviews as well, there are questions about who's coming back, restricted free agents, unrestricted, and moreover, as hockey fans, the Stanley Cup playoffs have been great. And while New York's not in it, me and Jenny have been able to text each other and come up with reflections about what it means for New York. So we're happy to be back. We know we got a Mike Sullivan special and a stats episode up. We've both been running around, but we're back and ready to get some stuff out. So let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, you know what? I think would be a good first topic would be talking a little bit about Sullivan's coaching style and
Yeah.
how it's going to fit in with this particular franchise and current group of players on the roster. I was doing my research on it, and what really stands out is just quite simply how aggressive Mike's coaching style really is. He's really that kind of coach that's into chasing the puck, that's into putting up those aggressive hits. And I really think players such as like Matt Rempe and JT Miller are really going to thrive underneath him. I think Mike Sullivan is almost lucky in that he's coming into the Rangers where they have like quite the number of big guys on the roster. Like between
Mhm.
Edstrom and Rempe, like his coaching style is going to fit in so well with the particular like height and weight statistics of this roster.
I fully agree with that. And I think we're doing this at a perfect time because you look at the four coaches remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Three of them, sort of similar coaching styles, these experienced coaches. I'm talking about Rod Brind'Amour from the Hurricanes, Paul Maurice from the Florida Panthers, and Pete DeBoer on the Dallas Stars. And then the fourth one's obviously Chris Knoblauch, who was a Rangers assistant coach. We know we've been over that. Check out BlueLineStation.com. You got to do a little digging for that. But those three coaches are very similar to Mike Sullivan in the fact that they win, they put on relentless pressure, and most importantly, they get the most out of their guys. And that's what Mike Sullivan's done in almost every stop in his coaching career, whether it was an assistant with the Rangers under Tortorella, whether it was head coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Boston Bruins. I want to focus on Boston for a second because he obviously had three of the best players of this generation in Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang doesn't give you a Stanley Cup automatically. And there's a reason why Pittsburgh is still the last team to go back to back and win the Stanley Cup. It's because it's really hard to win in this league. And Mike Sullivan knows how to win in this league. And I know we talked about the possibility of the Rangers maybe going for a younger coach. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought that Sullivan to the Rangers was always written in the stars. And the last thing, too, and then I'll throw it back over. Sullivan's going to get to do whatever he wants to this team. This is his team, and his relationship with Chris Drury is so wide-spanning, going back to when he was an assistant coach to Rangers to most recently when Drury was in charge of Team USA for the Four Nations Face-Off. Sullivan was right behind the bench there for Rangers on that team too. And Sullivan is going to bring in his guys, and he's going to get the most out of all these players. And oh, of course, Matt Rempe too. He's going to get the most out of these young players. Jake Gensel's one of the best scorers in this league. First goal of his career in the first period against the New York Rangers. Mike Sullivan was his coach. So I think Sullivan's going to get the most out of these guys. He brings experience, and I think this has been something that they talked about for a long time. And while nobody will admit it, and I'm not saying it, they have definitely talked about the possibility of him coming to the Rangers for years now, and now it's official.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Completely agree with almost everything you said, Jake. I think also just, again, we kind of threw out other names out there that we would have liked to have seen considered for, interviews for the new head coach role. But I think everyone kind of knew that Sullivan was going to be the guy simply because of his success, but also because, as you mentioned, he has history with the Rangers franchise. Going from being an assistant coach to then being a head coach elsewhere to then kind of coming back home to Madison Square Garden is a moment that is kind of, special for the fan base. But it's even more special when you put it into the perspective that the fan base has been wanting a new coach. Like this entire season across social media, everyone was calling for the firing of LaViolette. And just to put it plain and simple, they were bored with his coaching style. You
Yeah.
know, the blue shirt fan base is one of the fan bases that I would argue likes watching the aggression in hockey the most. Like anytime you see players drop the gloves and anytime you see any sort of brawl or any sort of chirping happening, like Rangers fans just completely lose their minds in the stands in the best way. So I think that I'm excited to see how the fan base embraces his coaching style.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that this fan base has been waiting for this since the Gerard Gallant era because Mike Sullivan was a conversation before the Rangers brought in Peter Laviolette, but it just couldn't happen because he was with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh still was fringe playoff team, and yeah, he was just under contract. And the Rangers now have a coach who can say, I won a Stanley Cup in the recent decade. And I didn't only win one, I won two. He's in the division. And like you said, I think the biggest thing every Ranger fan could agree with, regardless of how they thought last season went, the players looked dejected. There was something wrong in that room. And Sullivan is nobody's perfect, but I think he is the closest thing to perfect to bring in that room. And I think when you compare all the other possibilities that were head coaches that we talked about, I think there were a lot of good options. I think Sullivan is the perfect mold for this team that's among the older ones, has the experience, and could get back up to a Stanley Cup contender as soon as next year. So I fully agree. I think there has to be a lot of optimism. And I think there would be if the New York Knicks weren't in the conference finals.
Yeah, New York is kind of just like crazy right now. Like I'll log on to Twitter and see like all of the videos of what's going on at like Times Square and near Madison Square Garden, and
It's
it's just like
insane.
absolutely insane. But you know what? Shout out Timothy Chalamet
Yeah,
for all of the support he's bringing from like the A-listers to New York City
he's a
sports.
man of the people. He's a man
No,
of
but I mean the fact that like he's cheering on the New York Knicks and he has Kendall Jenner and Kylie Jenner who were born and raised in LA, like
I know.
rooting for New York City sports teams is absolutely like crazy. Like that man needs to go down as like a forever legend for New York City sports just for that accomplishment. Like for getting two LA baddies, for a lack of a better term, sitting there rooting for the Knicks. Like
No,
absolutely.
for real. He's getting molded into being the next Spike Lee. He's going to be in every Knicks game for the rest of his life. It's incredible to watch him. Congrats to all our Knicks fans watching because that is so cool. I wish I could say I'm a Knicks fan, but my dad is, and it is incredible what they're doing. So we'll
Yeah.
throw that out there. But shout out Timothy because I love seeing him on the streets. It's awesome.
Okay, transitioning back to, New York Rangers. For most of our readers who are tuning in, I'm sure you have seen the plethora of spam of our New York Rangers report card series that we're doing. And you know what, Jake? I am going to go ahead and give everyone a sneak peek because I am writing the coaches report
Oh
card
yeah.
right now for the coaches last year. So I am going to go ahead and go one by one of the coaches I included and tell you what grade I am giving them without my reasonings. So that way people can tune in to my article to hear my reasonings, but you tell me what you think of the grades. Okay.
Good.
I'm going to start with head coach Peter LaViolette. I gave an F.
Yeah.
Associate head coach slash defense Phil Housley. I gave an F. Power play coach Michael Pekka. I gave a D minus.
Mhm.
Penalty kill coach Dan Muse, I gave a C minus. What are your thoughts?
Laviolette spot on F. That team, they looked dejected for a lot of the year. This is a team that had 28 comeback wins in 23, 24, won won the President's Trophy, and they were just fun. This year they looked dejected, and whenever they went behind, you're just like, what are they doing? They didn't make adjustments, they didn't change lines. Laviolette absolutely deserved an F. Phil Housley, same thing goes there because the Rangers had so many gaping holes. There were a lot of
Like the
times.
Rangers defense this year looked like Swiss cheese with how many holes there were in it at certain points. Like I'm
Yeah,
not kidding.
Yeah,
That's the
no, I
best
think
like
that's a great
analogy
way
I
to
can come up with for it.
I think that's a great way to put it because of outside maybe Adam Fox. I think every Rangers defenseman had a really bad game or two or three or week or two or three. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, even though the Rangers have all their defensemen under contract. There's a lot of uncertainty there, and they gave up the most high quality and mid quality chances in the NHL, and it wasn't particularly close. That's why Igor Shesterkin's stats were really not up to par. The Rangers defense didn't help him at all. So I think Housley, I would even give him a G. Like I thought it was worse than Laviolette, in full honesty.
A G.
Yeah, I want Phil Housley to go for a while now. I mean that like look, I think he's a great coach, just not in that system with a bunch of younger defensemen. He's always been a guy that is better with these older guys. You saw him in Buffalo in his head coaching stint, a younger team couldn't get them back to the playoffs. It just didn't make sense. And then yeah, obviously the Rangers defense, there were so many times that you're just like, what are they doing? So I agree with that. And
Okay.
then next up is
Next up was power play.
okay.
Michael, I gave him a D minus.
I think that's fair for Michael Pekka. I am gonna give an F2, partially because this,
Okay, can you pause for a second? So here was my argument.
yeah,
What I was thinking was I was like, I can't give like I gave Peter and Phil F's simply because you can't give a coach that was fired anything other than an F in my was my reasoning. So I felt as I was writing this story that I couldn't give the Rangers power play coach and penalty kill coach an F as well because they weren't fired.
okay, that's completely fair. And using that rationale, I will say a D minus. The only reason I said F is because this was a Rangers power play that was top three in the NHL for 3 years, right? The Rangers were not ever a good 5v5 team, and they made two Eastern Conference finals. And it was because of their power play. And I could pull up multiple times where their power play came through in crucial moments. Artemi Panarin game seven against the Penguins. Adam Fox, game seven that later that year against the Hurricanes opens up the scoring. Then go to 2024 or even 2023, the two games the Rangers won, they scored power play goals. The Rangers power play from February to April, they scored like 5 goals. And the unit didn't change at all.
Mhm.
And that is insane, especially in a time where no matter how we want to put this narrative, the Rangers had a chance to sneak into the Stanley Cup playoffs
And they didn't.
and they didn't. And a lot of that is because of the power play not being able to convert. I mean, it's everything, but you could if you're the New York Rangers, they were able to get away with so many flaws for years because they had a good power play that could go out and almost score at will. And this year, like I tweeted it, you tweeted it, I've seen people tweet it. I genuinely felt more confident about the team playing shorthanded than I did on the power
Oh
play.
my God, no, I've seen that so many times, but I also want to point out the fact that like yes, the power play was bad this year, but that was not just Coach Michael's fault. Like
Oh, totally.
there are players like Chris Kreider who previously like are known for having that offensive strength on the power play unit that just was non-existent this year.
I agree with that. And I think one more thing that we've talked about off this is just the idea like too many cooks in the kitchen because Vincent Trocheck, Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, Adam Fox, and Chris Kreider, they have that relationship, have that mold, but you have other guys who could and should be getting power play 1 minutes. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere did not have a good season, but Alexis Lafreniere absolutely should have gotten power play one time. His expected goals for and 5v5 was higher than Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. And I'm
And
not joking about that. He should have gotten
and you know what, Jake? I think that's a big reason why LaViolette got fired is because, for lack of a better term, he was just stuck in the past.
so
Like
stuck.
the Rangers have some of the best like up and comers on their roster in the league. Like you look at Rempe, you look at Edstrom, you look at Laffy Taffy, like you look at even someone as young as Gabe Perreault,
Yeah.
and it's like at when we're at a chance where it's basically impossible for us to get into the Stanley Cup playoffs and he's not making changes to the lineup or to the power play unit, it just becomes inexcusable.
That was the last straw when he scratched Gabe Perreault for multiple games.
Hmm.
Especially when they burn a year on the entry level contract. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to say one, there's no argument that he didn't make the team better because of how skilled he was. Two, it's better to be on the ice than the press box. So I do agree with all that. And I think one more thing, Like, if you went on Rangers Twitter, whenever they were losing, you'd see the clip of Laviolette when he was on the Flyers yelling at them and people going, "Where is this guy? Where was that guy?" Because
Disappeared.
whenever the camera panned to him, he had a very similar emotion, and then he didn't go into the locker room apparently, which isn't unnormal because I know other coaches that do it, but when did he put a spark underneath this team? Because like I know I'm going on tangents. There's one video in the Laviolette Rangers area that stands out to me, and it was when the Rangers won the Stadium Series against the Islanders, and he goes epic freaking win, and they get hype, and then it ends with Matt Rempe, first career game. He gets the Broadway hat on the anniversary of his father's death. Yeah, a great video. Every Rangers fan should watch that. And Laviolette, he looked like the guy, and the team loved him. Where did that go? So I fully agree with you. Stuck in the
But what you
past.
said about like it being somewhat normal for coaches to not go into a locker room, like sure, but what's not normal is for a coach who has had as bad of a season as he did to admit that.
Yeah.
Like
Especially to the media. And as media members, me and you, we know that that is going to be the lead quote wherever.
like that is something where if I had a coach like him who has had this season, like that would be my headline and that would be like my lead in every article for the next 5 days.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I guarantee
It
you it
just
was.
becomes a common sense thing. But anyway, we've going on a bit of a tangent. So last coach I graded was penalty coach Dan Muse. I gave him a C minus simply because of how decent the penalty kill seemed to be at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Like there was potential there.
There
It
was.
quickly went downhill, but like you look at the kind of coaching aspects like Housley, where it just seemed like there was no potential from start to finish.
Yeah.
Where I thought that penalty kill was a bit of a different category because there was that success at the start of the season.
Yeah, I'll even go a little higher. I'll give him a C. I don't think anybody on this roster should get above this a C for this season, besides like maybe Rempe and Will Cooley, and then we could have that conversation another time. The reason I'll say C is because the Rangers, yeah, the kill was not incredible come the end of the season. I'm pretty sure they finished around 10th in the league. They did score the most shorthanded goals in the NHL at 18. Second closest was Florida, who are en route to win their second straight Stanley Cup or at least make the finals for the third straight time. Maybe they had 12. So the Rangers did score 18 shorthanded goals. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, but I do agree with everything you said because they were first in the league for until around February, and then it took a very dramatic drop off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess transitioning away from the coaches to we've been talking about Matt Rempe a lot, so just kind of an update on what keeping up with the Rempes. We
Play
have
that song. Yeah.
cut, cut theme song. Um, they took the cutest family trip to like Tokyo and were just like vibing to the max out there. There's a picture that Matt Rempe posted on his Instagram on his like final slide of his photo dump from Tokyo where he's like in a New York Rangers t-shirt, like in the middle of Tokyo, which I think was so cool. But I kind of want to take this time to say, like, I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion. I think that the New York Rangers players out of every single roster in the NHL need to be relishing in this offseason the most. They need to be taking their mental breaks. They need to be going on vacation. They need to be, like, I don't know, getting married, like doing whatever it is they need to do over the next few months.
Hmm.
That way that when they go back into training, when the regular season starts, they have no excuse for it to not be like balls to the wall, like we need to redeem ourselves like with a Stanley Cup. So I don't know. I feel like there are some players, like I when we were officially out of playoff contention, I saw so many memes on Twitter where it was like, well, they better book their flights to Cabo now
Yeah.
or whatever. But you know what? Hot take, like I really think the players need to do that because I don't want to see any excuses of like, well, we didn't get to enjoy the off season as much, like blah 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 blah. Like I need it to be balls to the wall, like when training starts.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what it's going to be. I think that Mike Sullivan's going to instill the idea of fresh start, no expectations. Look what just happened. And I think if you wanted to go back to it was either our first or second episode together. I said the Rangers have to sit in the filth and look what happened. And while I want them to enjoy themselves, right? These guys absolutely deserve a break. They should absolutely come into training camp with the idea that they are not the hunted anymore. They're the hunters. I
Love
think,
that.
yeah, I think every player in that locker room should be watching the playoffs and being like, that should have been us if we did the right things day by day and at the macro scale. And so I'll even clip this. The Rangers are now the hunters again. They are not the hunted, but they have the opportunity to get that target back on their backs. And that starts with coming into training camp on day one with very little expectations and putting, like you said, balls to the wall. And I hope that they both enjoy their offseason because they deserve it. I've seen guys like JT Miller playing golf, Matt Rempe going to Tokyo, Vincent Trocheck hanging out with the kids. Mika Zibanejad has a baby that's almost a year old. Congratulations to them.
Also,
Adam
she is
Scott,
that baby is the biggest New York Rangers fan. Like
biggest New York Rangers
he
fan.
goes up to the glass and is like, "Look at daddy!" Like it's so cute.
Daddy, right? And then Adam Fox, new baby, 2 months, 3 months old. And so they enjoy their time, balls to the wall come training camp. But I hope every single one of them has been watching the playoffs because I know they have friends on all of these teams and there's former Rangers on these teams and go, that should have been us.
All
And
right.
that only adds fuel to the fire, right? So I fully agree with everything you said because, like, let them enjoy themselves because they totally deserve to. And I'm never going to be the person that said they played like garbage, so they should live a miserable life because I'm never going to do that. But they can't forget about what happened. And then, like you said, they want a training camp. They'll be ready. They'll be ready. I have faith in them, and I have faith in Mike Sullivan. And unlike a lot of people, I have faith in Chris Drury.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of motivation, do you want to talk about maybe the city foe, the New York Islanders, what just happened with them, giving
Yeah.
Rangers any motivation?
For sure. Even more motivation, guys. Like biggest loss of the NHL season for the Rangers might have been, I mean, there have been so many. The biggest one might have been the fact that the New York Islanders got the number one pick for the 2025 NHL entry draft. And it's not because the New York Islanders are the New York Islanders. That obviously adds fuel to the fire and so another fuel to it.
So like the house was already burning down
The
to the
house was all, oh, it
like
was
the house
completely,
was already like burnt completely to the ground, but then like gasoline was poured on it
yeah.
and reignited the house.
It was a complete dumpster fire. And like the biggest thing, the Rangers swept the New York Islanders. They went 4-0 against them this year, including a game when the Rangers were out of playoff contention. They went to UBS Arena and scored nine goals. And that was after the Rangers scored one goal the past two games in critical games. And if the Islanders picked up one, if one of those games went differently, if the Islanders won in regulation once, the Rangers and Islanders would have swapped spots and the Rangers would have gotten the number one overall pick. And so it's just like another loss on this season. Do you trust the Rangers to develop a youngster? No. Do you think this is a good draft? This isn't a great draft. I mean, but it's still the number one pick. You have James Higgins, Matthew Schaefer. There's a lot of options. And for the Islanders, it could change their franchise. So the Rangers scoring 9 goals against the Islanders, they lose that game or any of the other ones, we are having a different conversation. And so, yeah, final nail in the coffin. And like you said, gasoline on the dumpster fire. And then, of course, it's the Islanders too, which is just like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Rangers have the 12th pick, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, but that's also something that I think like casual viewers of the NHL don't understand is like there are so many moving parts to this league.
Completely.
Like it is not just a sport, like it is a business with like economic moves and transactions that I think oftentimes get overlooked. So I think that's where like the New York Rangers fan base is so different from others right now because you are going into the next season with a new head coach. You're going into the next season with a new coaching style. Like you're
Yeah.
going into a new season with completely new expectations. So it's really, just seeing what they're going to do with it, plain and simple.
Totally. I think you put it perfectly. And the Rangers are the only team going into this season or next season with these implications because the Rangers were not only the biggest disappointment in the NHL this year, they were one of the biggest disappointments in NHL history. There are only four teams in the modern era that have won the President's Trophy and then missed the postseason the year after. That's bad. And you can look at all the other teams going into the 2025-26 season with first-year head coaches like the Ducks with Joel Quenneville or the Blackhawks with whoever they hire. All those teams missed the playoffs, but they've missed the playoffs for years. The Rangers were one of the favorites to win the Stanley Cup, and they missed the playoffs outright. That's bad. That is bad, bad, bad. It's one of the biggest disappointments in New York history. It's one of the biggest disappointments in NHL history. And so it just carries added weight. And I know I just said that the Rangers should play more freely now that they're the hunters, not the hunted. Just adds so much to the fire for them. And it's such a critical situation, like you said.
But yeah, but there's only one way to go from here, and that's up. So,
Oh,
just trying to like be like the little positive girl boss I am and be like, there's
please.
one direction to go, which
We're
is up.
like we're like a yin yang. Like I'm the pessimist, you're the optimist. So that's perfect. Like that's
Yeah.
perfect.
But and you know what? Again, shout out New York Knicks
Shout
and
out New York Knicks. It's
Chalamet
genuinely the best thing to happen in so
for
long.
keeping things near Madison Square Garden alive. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in and reading as always. Be sure to keep up with BlueLineStation.com for the rest of our report card series and for all things New York Rangers. So until next time, bye guys.
The blue line to Panarin. Skates right. Feeds Fox. Left side to Zibanejad. Back to Fox. Right side to Panarin. Quick movement. Shot. Score!
Wow.
Mika Zibanejad. It's a power play goal. And it's 6-2 Rangers.